Uh, Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unwanted Talks with Gurura Kalanidhi. So this is a sound check. For those of you who get to see me, can you just mention in the comments that I'm visible, I'm audible? Yeah, I could. I can see the three of you have joined. Just give me a comment saying that you can. I'm audible. That would be great, and we can get started with the video. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Speaker to today's video. Bringing on, bringing her on board. Just a second. Yeah. Hi Shiva Shakti. Good evening.
Hi, Guru Prag.
Yeah.
Good
Am I
evening.
audible? Good evening. Good evening.
Yeah, you're very audible.
1 second. I think my Bluetooth connection dropped off. Just a second.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Shit. Okay. Okay. I guess there is some issue with the Bluetooth connection, but doesn't matter. I hope I am audible for everybody who's joined us today. A very, very good evening to everyone who's joined us. So this is the second episode of Unwanted Talks with Gurura Kalanidhi, and a very, very warm welcome to Shiva Shakti, who gracefully, was willing to spend some time. We wanted to do this last week. We wanted to do this last Sunday. Unfortunately, we could not do that, so we've rescheduled it to today. Very, very warm welcome to you, Shiva Shakti. So why don't you get started and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on the Unwanted Talks with Guru Rakalanindi. I must definitely say that it's a very nice topic for the series that you're doing. Thanks for that. So I'll start with what I'm doing. I'm Shiva Shakti. I'm from Pondicherry, and I'm a PhD student at Indian Institute for Science Education and Research in Thiruvananthapuram. I joined PhD in the year 2014, in August 2014, and I started working in the area of microwave photonics. I've been working on some 3 to 4 projects, and the idea is that like in PhD, not all your projects are successful, so a lot of projects fail. And so my first project was a big failure. I had worked on it for 2 years and it kind of failed, but that's okay. That apart, I'll tell you what I worked on. So my first project I'll anyway tell, but because I think that you have to all discuss both the success and failures in research, because that teaches you more than what you say when you just discuss about successes. So I'll tell about the first project. The first project I worked on is called instantaneous frequency measurement. Okay, so the idea that generally, let's say a war is happening, okay, and there are aircrafts. So let's say the war is between two countries. So in the home country, you're going to have radars, which is going to detect signals from the aircraft, right? And the idea is to jam. What they do is basically they send some radio signals, and they see if these radio signals get reflected from the country they are targeting, or from whichever area they are targeting, right? And what the target has to do is they have to find if they have to find out these signals, and before the signals get reflected off, they have to jam these signals.
Right,
Right.
jamming part.
By jamming, what I mean is you have to detect the signals, and instead of reflecting back these signals by itself, what you have to do is you have to send some other signals. You are basically diverting the
Yeah,
aircraft into something else, right?
sort of like Darth
So
Vader.
what
Yeah,
happens is, yeah, so generally these signals are radio frequency signals. Okay, so which are like in the microwave regime. So these can be detected. So all these years in warfare, in electronics warfare, they were using radio frequency receivers. Well, that's as the name suggests, these frequency of the signal, and they can also tell you the amplitude of the signal.
Right.
So this has been going on for a very long time, right? But the problem is using radio frequencies or using radio frequency receivers have a big problem. Okay, so the problem is basically the receivers that you use at the home country or like at the target. These are very big, they're very bulky, and they're also very expensive. And also the third thing is they're prone to loss. Fine.
Okay.
So this
Yeah.
is a big problem. And
Right.
they are also prone to what is called as an electromagnetic interference. So
Right.
electromagnetic interference, if I have to tell you in a very simpler way, it's called, like, you would have heard about crosstalk, right? You send one
Yeah.
signal, but on the other end you are getting some other signal. So that is what is called electromagnetic interference. So this is not very good, right? And they're also expensive. And on the war front, you don't want something which is bulky and all. You want something light, portable, and everything.
Right.
So what people thought was, they came up with the idea of introducing optical signals which are easier to process.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right.
And for that they can use optics and everything. Photonic chips are generally made of silicon or chalcogenide and all these things. So the question is now, how do you take the information from the radio frequency domain and transfer it to the optical domain?
Right.
So
Okay.
for that, you use different processes. So there are a lot of processes. The process I used is called stimulated Brillouin scattering. So
Right.
some of
Right.
some of you must be familiar with what is called Raman scattering, right? It
Right.
was introduced by
Rally and Raman
C.V.
scattering.
Raman
Yeah.
in the early 1930s, for which he received the Nobel Prize. So stimulated Brillouin scattering is pretty much like Raman scattering. So here what you do is you sweep a radio frequency and into a material. That is, you input radio frequencies into a material, and every material has its own resonance. That is, it will
Right.
start vibrating to maximum at certain frequency, what you call as
Right.
a resonance frequency, right?
Right.
So now, after tuning it over the entire radio frequency range, you will see that you will get some kind of a curve. At some frequencies, the vibration is going to be maximum, and at other frequencies, the vibration is going to be minimum, right? So you're going to basically get a one-on-one correspondence
Right.
between the frequency and the amplitude. So what you do is you basically come up with a graph, right? On the x-axis, and let's say x-axis and y-axis, which is our typical school convention. On the x-axis, you will have frequencies, and on the y-axis, you will have the amplitudes, or what we call as the intensity, right?
Right.
So now
Right.
you don't have to have your radio frequency receivers. Instead of that, what you can have is something called as a photodetector. So how
Right.
small is a photodetector? A photodetector is smaller than the size of your palm. Okay?
Right. Okay.
And it is lossless. It is completely lossless, and it is immune to electromagnetic interference.
Interference.
Okay.
Okay.
So now what you will do is, you are getting a radio frequency, and this radio frequency will fall on the sensor, and it will correspond to a particular intensity.
Right.
From that,
it will
you can
register.
always
Yeah.
find out what the frequency is.
Right. Right. Right.
So this is what I tried to do, but the problem was, I tried to do a proof of concept experiment, and you take the information from the radio frequency regime to the optical regime through what is called as modulation, for which you need something called as a modulator, single sideband modulator. So that's what happens. Basically, it's like you have a carrier, you have a radio frequency, you're superposing that on that, and you're taking the information. And I didn't have the modulator. That was pretty much why that project failed. I mean, we couldn't do the measurement so accurately that we had, because it's very important that the measurement has to be very accurate in the sense, right? Like in defense, you cannot compromise on that. Right. So I had a accuracy less than 50%. So we thought, it's better not to pursue it further. But we did, like propose the proof of concept, but someone else can, like take it up further and then work on it.
Right.
So that was pretty interesting for me. Yeah, that was the first thing which really help me. I think there is a question from Vivekanandan Jaikumar asking if it is called scrambling of signals. I think he means he's referring to jamming of signals. It's exactly
Yeah.
right. What I meant was scrambling of signals.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So,
Okay.
so let me get this straight. When you say you're jamming signals, you're going to be let's say bombarding them with a lot that's lost in the. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. You add a lot of
Okay.
noise. What you do is like you add a lot of noise to it, so that
Okay.
the
Okay.
signal gets lost. Whatever it's getting
Right.
reflected, the one who's
Right.
attacking
Right.
you. So
Right.
that's what
Right.
you do.
Right. Right. Right.
So there are different types of jamming. There is called single shot jamming, and there is something called barrage jamming. Single
Right.
shot jamming is like you completely scramble the signal with a very narrow range of signals. Barrage jamming is like a large bandwidth of signals.
Fair
So
enough.
that's the difference.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, moving
Okay.
on to your next research. So, I mean, what's something that you're currently working on? Would you be willing to share with us?
So the next project that I moved on was by accident, that I would say, which is also something very common in the research field. The only thing is that you would find something, and then the idea is like you have to find the explanation for that. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
I was like basically doing this experiment late in the night, around 2 or 3 in the morning, and I started. So I had to observe a symmetric graph. Okay,
Okay.
a symmetric graph, you can what I can the simple example I can give is basically a semicircle.
Okay.
Okay, that's symmetric, but I don't mean exactly that. You have to have what is called as a Gaussian, but for people who don't understand what is a Gaussian, I can say that it is a semicircle, because a semicircle is symmetric. If you put a line at the center, it's going to be symmetric on both the
Right.
sides,
Right.
right? So what happens is that I was trying to work on that, and I was trying to extract these symmetric patterns again using stimulated Brillouin scattering.
Mm-hmm.
And what I instead observed was something very interesting late in the night. I started observing something very asymmetric.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when I say semicircle, I draw a x-axis, a line in the x-axis, and it is all the points are going to be above x-axis.
Okay. Okay.
Nothing is going to come below x-axis, right?
Okay.
But what I observed was there were parts of this graph, or there were parts like in x-axis I'm having frequency, and there
Mm-hmm.
were parts of the frequency where it was dropping
Mm-hmm.
below the x-axis. Okay,
Okay.
it was
Okay.
dropping to the negative values. I
Okay.
expect positive values only, but there are ranges where it goes to 0 and it drops to negative values, and it
Right.
again comes up to positive values.
Right. Right.
Okay,
Right.
so initially I assumed that like this is just a hallucination, because I was working late in the night and all that. So but I repeated the experiment a couple of times. I went the next day and I repeated it a couple of times, and this was repeating under
Okay.
a certain conditions.
Okay.
So we got interested. I and my boss were discussing about it, and we got pretty interested in that, and so we wanted to explore what it is like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we did a literature survey, which is something which everyone does who is
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
research, or
Yeah.
even otherwise you do it when you're interested in a topic. So I searched or I did a research on asymmetric profiles and optics, and I came across this paper which was published in 1960s by a quantum physicist called Ugo Fano.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Okay. Okay.
and he had observed such resonances in atomic systems in the
Okay. Okay.
quantum mechanical domain. Okay,
Right.
so
Right.
by quantum mechanical domain, I mean something which is like really, really small. You go to the quantum
Right.
scale, which is the Planck scale. Okay,
Right. Right.
so that's where we are working on. So he had observed that in atomic system, in gases and all that, and no one had watched it elsewhere.
Okay.
But we again did a very thorough survey, and then we came across a lot of other platforms where such asymmetric profiles were observed.
Uh, so just to pause you here. So when you say, scattering, you're talking of scattering of what radiation? You're talking only of microwaves here, is it? Or I mean, any form
Yeah,
of.
so I'm basically okay. Yeah, I'm sorry about it. I should
Yeah.
have told
Just for the
before.
sake of the
So
audience. Yeah.
I'm yeah. So I'm talking about scattering of radiation, where the input will come from laser, and the
Okay.
frequency or the wavelength will be around 1500 nanometer.
Right.
Okay, so
Right. Right.
give it a, to give it an idea, visible light, which is, like white light from violet to red, the wavelength of those radiation is from 700 nanometer up to 900 nanometer. And then comes your infrared radiation, which starts from 1000 nanometer. Okay. And this 1500 nanometer falls in a range called mid-infrared radiation. Which is from 1200 nanometer and goes up to 1600 nanometer or something. It depends. Okay, so we work in 1500 nanometer. So what is special about 1500 nanometer, you might ask, right? Because a lot of people work in 1500 nanometer. The answer to that is 1500 nanometer is called as the telecommunication wavelength. All your internet, all your data transfer, everything happens that is happening today happens at 1500 nanometer. Okay, at that particular range. I don't mean 1500 exactly. I mean, that range.
The spectrum, if I must. Okay.
So why not at other frequencies? Like, I mean, you might ask, like, again, like, why not other wavelengths? Why 1500 nanometer specially? Because absorption, 1500 nanometer does not get absorbed by water.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. So there's no loss through water.
So there is no loss through water. For example, you're transferring a signal between two places. Okay, you have moisture in the atmosphere.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
So you don't want it to be absorbed by that.
Right. So the entire bedrock of telecommunications is built on this. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So in telecommunication, it's very important to take care of every single loss.
Okay. 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 Right.
So that's what. So we are basically looking at 1500 nanometer, and the resonance will be in the microwave regime. Okay, like the radio frequency regime.
Okay.
So you are basically, you will be sending these 1500 nanometer into the fiber. So fiber is a system which I'm working on, optical fibers. So I generally work on a 1 kilometer optical fiber or 2 kilometers of optical fiber, and I see how the scattering happens. Basically, what I'm seeing is so if you're asking for the material, I'm seeing the scattering of silica molecules, because optical fibers are generally silica.
So silica makes up the
So that's what I work on. So so coming back to what I work on. So I see. So then I started observing these asymmetric profiles. So we were interested in this, and we saw what was happening, and then it appeared that so when the scattering happens at two frequencies. One is at a higher frequency and one is at a lower frequency. Okay. So let's say X is the input radiation, which is your 1500 nanometer.
Right.
Okay. And there will be two scatterings. Okay, that happens in Raman scattering also. Okay, so there will be a higher frequency, which will be some X plus Y frequency, like let's call it hertz, and there will be an X minus Y frequency as well. Okay, so in most of the system, what people do is they suppress the X minus Y frequency.
Okay.
And they only observe what happens at X plus Y frequency.
And why would that be?
Okay. Why means people are just interested in that. Even for the instantaneous frequency measurement, if you want to get the semicircle, it is enough if you just observe X plus Y frequency.
Okay.
So you're basically plotting X plus Y, where let's say Y goes from -1 to +1.
Okay. So, for the
confusing.
It's a little technical for the general audience. So I'd like to know when you refer to the semicircle. So are you referring to let's assume what plot turns up on I'm assuming an oscilloscope or something of that sort. So I'm also trying to relate to it. So would you be able to explain what you mean by the semicircle?
The semicircle, again, like I told in the case of the first project, I told that every material has this resonance frequency.
Oh, okay. Which is
at the center. Right?
Okay.
And if you go down the resonance, amplitude of the vibrations is going to reduce. Right? The material is not going to vibrate properly. And if
Right,
you
right.
go above the resonance frequency, again the
Mhm.
vibrations are going to reduce. So there is just
Okay,
one frequency where the vibration intensity of the vibration is going to be maximum.
makes sense. Okay, okay, makes sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
makes sense.
so that's what I
There,
mean.
so there'll
So
be no
again,
loss if I'm right. I mean, let me get it straight. So there'll be no loss at this particular frequency. It's sort of like a
there will be no
Goldilocks.
loss at this particular point.
Okay,
Exactly.
okay, 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 okay. Great, great, great.
So that's what happens. So we started looking into it, and in most of the experiments, even for communication experiments and all that, people just want like one scattering, which is the higher frequency scattering.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Why? Because that is enough. You have to just modulate it. You have to put a carrier over it. I mean, you have to put a signal over it. So that is enough. So
Right.
it was never
Okay.
explored. And also naturally, what happens is these two scatterings happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
On both sides, they are not of the same intensity.
Okay. Okay.
Okay? One is of a very high intensity, and the other one is of a very low intensity.
Okay. 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 Mm-hmm.
And because of that, you call one as a gain process, the other one as a loss process.
Okay. 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 Okay.
Okay? So nobody is
Right.
interested in having a loss in the system. So they'll just suppress the loss, and they will just take what contributes to the gain,
Right. Okay.
right?
Okay.
So okay, when doing the experiment, I'll just
Yeah.
agree. I was a
Yeah.
bit lazy, so I hadn't suppressed the signal, and I
Okay.
sent both the gain and the loss into the system. So what
Mm-hmm.
happened was there was some kind of interaction happening between the gain and the loss itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay,
Right. Okay.
and because of the difference in amplitude, and like whenever you're describing a wave, a
Mm-hmm.
signal,
Mm-hmm.
there are two components to it. One is
Mm-hmm.
called the amplitude,
Yeah.
how high the wave vibrates, and the
Right.
other one is called as a phase.
Okay.
Okay, there are two waves. One might be leading the other wave by a certain degree,
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So you call that as a phase. Uh, so this gain process has an amplitude and a phase, and similarly the loss component has like a particular amplitude and a phase. So these two were interacting with each other, and it was contributing to the dip in the
Okay.
semicircle.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So we called it Fano-like resonances in using stimulated Brillouin scattering.
Okay.
So why this is important? So the question might be why this is important.
Right.
There
Right.
are already so many systems where Fano has been demonstrated. So why this is important? That is the next question. So coming to that, so you can see a dip, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have this whole range of frequencies where I have created a very sharp dip at one frequency.
Okay. Okay.
Now let's say I'm going to scan some frequency across this entire semicircle.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
All the positive values correspond to transparency, which means they will pass through the system.
Okay. 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 Right.
So let's say at 0 it will be 0, so that frequency won't pass through anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say at 1 you send 1 hertz you send a signal, and this will have a certain amplitude because it's increasing, right? So it will gain that much and it will go through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, then it will slowly go through. At resonance there will be maximum transfer.
Right. 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 Yeah.
Right, but as you come there is this frequency where you have a dip, it's a very sharp dip.
Okay.
Let's say
Okay.
it goes to minus 30 or something,
Okay. Okay.
so that particular frequency will be completely suppressed.
Okay. So you can use this to suppress signals if I'm getting it right.
Signals,
Basically,
yeah.
so let me get this straight. So what an application for this to be would be to suppress noise of sorts, basically.
Noise, or you can say in again in satellite systems or radar, or again in electronic warfare you use what are called as notch filters.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so notch filters are available in electronics as well. And
Right.
again, as I said, they are prone to the same kind of losses and electromagnetic interference and everything. Okay. So if you want to, suppress one signal, you have a range of signals and you want to suppress just one signal.
Okay. Okay.
Then you pass it through this system where this one signal gets suppressed.
Kind of like a double slit, if I must say.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So for example, let's take the same thing. Let's take the same thing like I explained in the previous project. We know that we had to scramble the signals, right?
Right.
So we don't want to send the same signal back.
Okay.
So you can basically suppress this signal and send the other signals.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. So,
That's
could you throw some light on the potential applications for this, or where do you see them? In addition to, of course, notch filters, what are other applications that you sort of come across, or where this would be beneficial?
Some of the applications of this include switches, what are called as switches. Again, like notch filters, you can have switches. So if you want to like divert light across, two different paths, you can put this filter, and you can send
Like an
one,
interferometer?
a couple,
Like an
like what?
interferometer.
Pardon?
An interferometer.
Yeah, like an interferometer. Yeah, like an interferometer. You can send one signal along one path and all the other signals along the other path, and you can create a difference, a phase difference between these two, and then you can let them interfere and all that.
Right.
In which case, you don't need a very broad semicircle. You just need a very narrow semicircle, and like you can play with it. And we also found a very interesting thing. It is not just we were not just able to create one dip. We were also able to create 3 to 4 dips. So we were able to play by sending like different frequencies along different to see how they interact.
Okay, so when you say dip, do you mean absorption by any chance? Because I mean, or you're just saying that that particular signal was completely scattered across, or how do we?
It's mostly scattered across. It's mostly scattered across.
There's no absorption in. Okay, there's no absorption.
There's no absorption in it.
Okay. So I do have a bunch of questions for you. Would you be willing to take them? Okay, so you brought up telecommunications, right? So I know this is 2020. I know there's a lot of questions around this. So 5G is something that we've all seen that. I mean, it's getting rolled out. So what do you think? How harmful do you think is microwave-based communication for us? How do you think? Because lots of conspiracy theories floating around how 5G has been. I know it sounds ridiculous, but people have been going around telling that 5G is the reason for coronavirus. Of course, as absurd as that sounds, but as an expert, I'd like your take on that.
Yeah. See, this kind of conspiracy theories came when 3G was introduced. This kind of conspiracy theories came up when 4G was introduced. So every time some new technology gets introduced, there'll definitely be a set of people, who are going to come up with conspiracy theories and tell you that, okay, this is blah, 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 this is not good for health and all that. Okay, that aside, let's see why. I'll tell you, like what is 5G. Like 5G again is a bandwidth of microwave radiation.
Right.
It composes of 3 tiers of radiation. The first 2 tiers are basically were also used in 3G and 4G communication. Okay. Now third tier is the only new set of frequency which we are going to use. So what is 5G? 5G is a type of electromagnetic radiation. Okay. So what is difference between 5G and 4G? 5G is going to have a longer wavelength and a smaller frequency. Right. Because every light that you take, every light wave that you take has 2 components to it. You can either describe it in terms of amplitude and phase, or you can describe it in terms of wavelength and frequency.
Right. Okay.
Wavelength is how big that light wave is. So, for example, in school also you would have learned a wave is described with this crest and trough, right? This is how you draw a wave. So, the distance between 2 crests is what you called as a wavelength. Right.
Yeah.
And let's say let's say I draw 15 centimeters. I use a scale and I draw 15 centimeters. There are I can draw waves with different separations.
Okay.
Like I can draw waves which are placed very close to each other, such that the crests are very close to each other. Or I can draw waves which are very stretched apart. Like I can
Fair
draw
enough.
either 2 waves or I can draw 15 waves within that, right?
Right.
So 5G is something which has, which has a very large wavelength, which means the separation between the two crests is going to be extremely high. So
Okay.
that the advantage, as the name suggests, longer the wavelength, you can transmit it over a larger distance.
Right.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So coming to the frequency part, wavelength and frequency are inversely proportional.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So the wavelength is going to be high and the frequency is going to be low.
Right. Okay.
Okay? And what physics suggests is that the frequency is also proportional to the energy, which is how
Right.
powerful that, what is the punch in
Mm-hmm.
that light,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that itself suggests that 5G does not have that much of power in it.
Okay. Okay. So it's going to be, I mean, lost over a. It's only useful for a short communication range, and I guess
Yeah. For
even LO is
example,
not.
let's, if you go, like if you go down the spectrum, by going down the spectrum, what I mean is going down the wavelength, you will reach a point where you have X-rays and gamma rays.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right. Right. Yeah.
X-rays and gamma rays have very low wavelength,
Okay. Okay.
but they have extremely high frequency because they are inversely proportional, right?
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right. Right.
So what
Okay.
happens is, if your body gets exposed to either X-rays or gamma rays, even the DNAs can be torn apart.
Right. 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 Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, they won't penetrate to long distances. That's why you use it in medical imaging and all that.
Right. So they're very close.
Okay.
You'll have to have them very close. Yeah. Okay.
Very close. Okay. So in 5G, what happens is, as far as now, I mean, till whatever research has happened till this point, people suggest that 5G can penetrate into your body, especially your cornea and your skin. It can penetrate, but it does not have enough energy to tear apart the molecules in the body.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, okay.
See, visible light again heats up your body. Why? It does penetrate your skin. That does
Yeah.
not mean it causes any damage. I mean, it does cause damage. Like ultraviolet does cause, like it causes skin cancer and everything. But that comes when you are like exposed to too much into it.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
That's where you wear skin.
Right. Right. Right.
Sunscreen and all that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, so it can penetrate the skin by a very small amount, which is harmless. So even in experts who are in cellular communication, people are like, still debating as to, whether it's good or bad and all that. But evidences suggest there is absolutely no harmful effects from 5G
Okay.
radiation.
That's, I mean, that's very useful. I learned a lot actually. So, and adding to your point, of course, visible light, the whole vitamin D process is possible because visible light can penetrate our skin. Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. So my next question I have is, so how lossy or unlossy microwave based fiber optic communication is likely to be when compared with current tech, which uses visible frequencies?
Pardon, can you repeat the question? I was not able to hear.
No, how unlossy or lossy microwave based fiber optic communication is likely to be when compared with current tech, which uses visible frequencies. So I guess visible frequency is what we currently use in fiber optic broadband communication.
Yeah. So microwave photonics is like extremely beneficial. That's what I would say.
Okay.
So for example, most of the communication which happened before fiber optics came into picture, like fiber optics came into picture in the 1960s, that's the year pretty much laser was introduced, because without laser, fiber optics is pretty much not possible, like you have to send the light, and only if you have a proper light can you actually superpose the signal onto it and send it to the other side. Right. So before that, it was, everything was based upon electronics. Okay. So there are two things about it. One, electrons have mass, whereas light doesn't have mass.
Oh, photons are massless.
So,
yeah.
Photons are massless. We all know, again, I mean, I won't say we all know, but it's a common, well-known fact that, the fastest thing that travels in the universe is light.
Right.
That is the ultimatum. Nothing can travel faster than light. right?
Yeah, yeah,
But electrons have mass, and electrons travel to conductors like iron or copper cables. Most of the time, we use copper cables, right, for sending signals and information. So what
right.
happens is when you apply a potential, so how you transfer signal is you apply a potential and electrons start moving from one end to other end. So that's how
Okay,
the information transfer.
okay,
So when they are
okay,
passing through, it generates a lot of heat.
okay,
Okay, so
okay,
this process is referred to as Joule heating.
okay, 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 okay,
Okay,
okay.
so which is not very beneficial, and also when there are a lot of electrons in it, and these electrons can start colliding with other electrons because of that as well. Like heat will be generated,
Right,
right?
right,
So that
right.
makes them extremely lossy.
Okay, okay,
Okay,
okay,
so
okay,
in photonic terms, we refer to them in dB, which is decibels.
okay,
That's
okay.
how we measure the loss.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be about 25 dB loss or something, which is a very high value,
Oh,
which
okay,
is an
okay.
extremely high value.
So all
Okay.
that energy is going to
And
okay.
yeah, and also if you're transferring information through electric cables, again through copper cables, you will need amplifiers. Amplifiers are
Yeah,
these
yeah, yeah.
systems which will boost up the signal,
Energy
and you
signals,
will
yeah.
also need signal regenerators. Okay,
Okay,
so what happens is higher the frequency that you're transmitting across a copper cable, there will be higher signal distortion.
okay, okay,
The
okay.
signal will be lost.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the distance between 2 points where you have to put an amplifier is only 10 meters,
Okay, okay,
and
okay.
so long distance communication is like extremely not possible.
And expensive, I guess. Yeah.
It's
Okay.
very expensive, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like every 10 meters you have to put a
Yeah.
amplifier and signal generator. Like again, as I said in the beginning, these RF systems are extremely
Right.
expensive
Right.
because
Right.
of electronic and everything. Okay, now coming to the fiber part, when microwave photonics was introduced, somewhere they are taking the signal into the optical domain, like I said, through a process called optical modulation,
Okay.
electrical to optical modulation. So here the loss is only about 0.0 dB. So you
Wow.
can see the
Okay.
difference from 25 dB, it's only
This is
0.02
across
dB
distances,
over.
or is it, sorry, this is across distances, or it's is it a property of distance, or it's going to be uniform across
It's a property of distance. So
okay.
that was 25 dB over 10 meters. This is 0.02 dB over a
Over.
kilometer. So
Wow.
you can see
Okay.
how low that is.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's some three
So in
orders of
again you
magnitude. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, optical amplifiers, again, they are chip sized and optical regenerate. Again, you have to use optical. I'm not saying that, you can completely get rid of all these optical amplifiers and generators, but it's quite possible that, like what you use between every 10 meters, instead of that, you can use between every few
Kilometer.
kilometers. That's an
Right.
added advantage. And it makes
Right.
life simple, and copper cables are expensive, optical fiber cables are cheap. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and also
Mm-hmm.
the bandwidth of data transfer can be very high to the other
Right.
end of the system.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question.
Yeah,
So, how do you
yeah.
tackle interaction of microwaves with materials? So, we've all seen how common food objects interact with microwave radiation. How do such narrow frequencies react with materials they pass through? So, I mean, this is also something I had. Now, you mentioned that, there's energy loss through heating. So, microwave also generates some sort of heat when it interacts with materials, right? How does it, interact in this particular situation?
So what you're doing is like in microwave photonics, something called modulation, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So you have just received the signal at this end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there are
Mm-hmm.
two ends. One is the end, one is the receiving end. Okay. At the transmission end,
Right.
what you do
Right.
is you
Right.
have a laser, and on that you superpose a microwave signal. Okay, so
Right.
let's
Okay.
say the laser signal is as I said, it's about 1500 nanometer, 1500 nanometer,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? Now on top of that you put a microwave signal,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically like adding up something to it.
Okay, okay, okay. So there is no
So
heating
basically,
involved.
no, what happens is this 1500 nanometer becomes 1550 nanometer.
Okay. Okay. Oh, okay.
because
So
it's
it
an
will be
optical signal. This
subtracted.
is not a
Okay. Makes sense.
microwave signal anymore,
Okay. 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 So
right?
it's just visible. It's not
Yeah,
microwave anymore. Okay. Okay.
yeah, it's
Uh,
infrared. I'm sorry, it's mid infrared, right? It's
okay.
not a microwave anymore. So then you have this mid infrared radiation. You do whatever process you want with this. You transmit over, like thousands of kilometers, and at the
Right.
receiving end, like
Right.
if you want to transfer an information from India to US or something, after all those hundreds of kilometers, what you do is there is a receiving end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
at this receiving end, what happens is the inverse of what happened at the transmission end.
So you subtract the light from
There
it
is,
and just the
yeah,
microwave
there
radiation.
you subtract the light. So you call it optical to electrical conversion,
Okay. Okay.
right?
Wow.
So it again becomes an RF frequency.
Wonderful. Fabulous.
Yeah.
So, okay. Are directed energy weapons possible with microwave? Does your area of research involve studying concentrated bursts of microwaves? It's a very interesting question.
Yeah, but I don't exactly work on that, but I think it is quite possible. I mean, I don't have much
Okay.
expertise in
Okay.
this
Let's
area
not
to
get into
comment on
that.
it.
Okay. Okay. So, what are some interesting applications you foresee for your field of study in the near future? I mean, we've covered that, but do
Uh,
you want to add something that we've missed
yeah.
on?
Again, like there is something called wideband frequency measurement, which is very important because if you're creating a system using electrical means, you can measure it over a very you can only measure frequencies over a very small range. Okay,
Okay.
like you will
Okay.
be like like people would have heard about what are called as these LCR circuits, right?
Okay. Okay.
uh,
Can you
this is
elaborate? I
like
mean, I've not heard of it.
inductance.
Okay.
Okay, these are called as the inductance, capacitance, and
Ah,
resistance
yeah, yeah.
circuits.
Okay.
These are like, yeah, so these are like, like they vibrate only at a very narrow range of frequencies. Like for example, a certain LCR circuits which you have, L is inductance, C is capacitance, and R is resistance. Okay, so they operate only at a very narrow range of frequencies. Let's say it goes from 1 hertz to 25 hertz. You have to have a, like a small system like an oscilloscope or something, and for that you have to have an RF generator, and you have to have an RF receiver, and again from
Mm-hmm.
25 hertz to 50 hertz you have to have another set of instruments and everything. But
Okay.
coming to microwave photonics, since you are like superposing everything in the optical domain, and the
Mm-hmm.
bandwidth of the optical domain is much higher than the bandwidth of electrical domain. That
Right.
is
Right.
a
Okay.
factor advantage.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
right from 1 hertz up to 1 billion hertz you can measure with one instrument.
Wow. That gives us a lot of bandwidth to, yeah. Data carrying capacity
That gives
increase
a lot of bandwidth.
exponentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Great. Great.
So
Yeah. Uh,
that is
okay.
one biggest advantage.
So I have a question as well. So this is something so I've been following up on, space and, satellites and stuff. So how plausible do you think, this whole, microwave based, communication works when you're going to have, satellites, sort of beaming internet down to us. So Starlink is a company that's been working on that. So I've been always curious about how that works out. How will the latency be, better, in the long run? Do you see that better than, contemporary fiber optic based communication? Because they've been promising a lot better latency than what's currently possible. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it is going to be definitely better with microwave photonic communication, because they are going to be better than fiber optics in terms of loss, and
Mm-hmm.
they are going to be smaller than fiber optics in terms of loss. Again, as I said, like with fiber optics, you have this problem. You have this very big problem because these are all underground cables, right? You have thick cables, but they face a big threat from sharks.
Yeah.
Sharks actually, they start feeding on these cables. They
Okay.
attack these cables, and it's a very tricky business to fix them. Okay, so
Okay.
it's we call them, like there are different processes to, like taper a fiber and attach a
Mm-hmm.
new fiber in it, because
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
modes have to perfectly match,
Yeah. They'll have to
right? For
splice it.
example, if there is
Yeah.
there is a, yeah, you have to splice them, right? So
Yeah.
splicing is not an easy tech. Even to do it in lab when everything is perfect is very difficult. To go
Okay.
underground and doing that is much more difficult. So
Okay.
people are trying to, overcome those kinds of things, and that's pretty much how Starlink works on it.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Okay. Oh, great, great, great.
so
So
that's,
Elon Musk is not as crazy as he seems. I hope so.
yeah.
Okay.
It's going to
Fair
be big.
enough. Fair
I
enough.
won't say that it's going to be possible anytime very soon, but
Yeah.
this is
The
something,
timeline
which
is
is
very
going to
different.
be big. Yeah, but this will be definitely something which will be big. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
yeah, but you can
Great.
look
Great.
into it.
Yeah. Okay. So these questions, I have three more questions which are related to, the field of study. So not related to your field of study. So this is saying,
Okay.
can you throw some light on how research in India is as a whole, and what are some pros or cons of being a PhD candidate in India?
Uh, okay,
Yeah,
I'll
you can go
basically
ahead.
talk
I
about
know.
being PhD. I'll basically talk about being a PhD in experimental science in India, because there are two streams, right? There are
Okay.
theoreticians and there are experimentalists. Okay, so theoreticians, I won't say that theoreticians have a very easy job, and I'm not biased towards experimentalists or anything. But for theoreticians, the life is a bit simple. You have a supercomputer, you have a table, and you have some papers. Your life is sorted.
So on
You
simulation.
need to definitely have a good guide. Yeah, you definitely need to have a good guide, and you need to have access to papers, especially if you're working in institutes which do not have, access to good journals and everything. Um, so that is it's quite difficult. But coming to the experimental side, there are definitely some pros of being a PhD candidate in India. Like, okay, one, you're closer to home, uh,
Okay.
because I'm not talking about students coming from abroad to do PhD in India. Uh, Again, they are going to be away from home. I'm talking about, home candidates,
Mm-hmm.
because the mental health situation in the country is, the plight of mental health situation in the country is like very bad,
Right.
especially
Right.
for PhD candidates. Like,
Right.
not every institute has a counseling center, and not every PhD candidate also sorts to, like, get help.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Even if you want to help a friend, most of the time they don't want to get help. It's still considered a taboo. So at least you have to be close to home, and still there are so many problems which is happening. So that way it
Right.
is an advantage, but otherwise I don't really see an advantage of where you're doing a PhD. But another advantage I would say is that a lot of new institutes are coming in India, right? Like, even
Okay.
what I'm working, where I'm working, ISER Thiruvananthapuram, it was established by MHRD just for basic sciences. Until that
Okay.
point, we only had until 2008. In 2008, somewhere, ISERs were introduced. Until then, we only had good technology institutes, which are different IITs, right?
Right. Right.
But
Right. Right.
fundamental science is like totally different from
Right. Right.
application. Technology is mostly about application. So
Yes.
they have
Yes.
started institutes which are focusing on fundamental science, which I think is very much needed in the country. Which previously the research was happening only in few institutes, like Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, Raman Research Institute in Bangalore, National
Yes.
Science
Yes. Yes.
Center for Biological Sciences in Bangalore. So more concentrated in Bangalore. So now things are getting spreaded out. Like in South, we have Trivandrum, and like ISERS itself, it's there in Pune, Tirupati, Mohali, Bhopal, and Kolkata. So it's like spread over India. So which is like attracting more students, who come into these institutes.
Wow. Wow.
And so that is the advantage. And the cons of it, again, for theoreticians, one major disadvantage that I see is that the supercomputers, like for example, if you're in US or somewhere, Intel and IBM is going to support you to get
Yeah.
all these supercomputers. So installing them and getting them is going to be much easier than when you're doing it in India.
Okay.
In India, you have to either develop it from scratch, or you have to, like, get it from elsewhere.
Okay.
when it becomes a bit not it's
Wow.
not easy. So yeah. And coming to the experimental side, setting up a lab in India is very tricky. Like for example,
Yeah.
I was my PhD supervisor's first PhD candidate. So for the first 1.5 year, I was almost jobless. I didn't have a lab. I didn't have a lab space.
Okay.
So lab space gets allotted later, and most of the instruments are ordered from abroad. So like custom clearance, and they have to come from abroad. And if instruments are not good, again it becomes bad or something. Either you have to get a new instrument, which means you have to wait for another 4 months before continuing your research.
Right. Right. Right.
That takes a lot of time. And also, one thing which would concern, one negative aspect about both theoreticians and experimentalists, that again about mental health facilities, I don't think are pretty good.
Yeah.
We are
That
seeing
that's
suicide cases every now and then, so I think that's a major
that's something
disadvantage.
that's been neglected. Yeah. It's something we all need to pay attention. Very true. Okay. So I have two last questions, and there's one more question from the audience.
Yeah,
I guess you can take that before I ask these two questions. So I think Prahlad has
sure.
asked us. Yeah. I hope you can see that as well. So he's asked tuning exactly
Yeah,
resonance
tuning
practically not.
exactly resonance of resonance condition either below or above.
So he's
I think
asking
at
you.
least in the case, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Please carry on. Sorry. Yeah. Please carry on.
I think at least in the case of stimulated Broadline scattering, which I work on, tuning to exact resonance is quite possible, because what you do is you basically also have something called as a probe frequency, which you set at resonance, because usually exciting the molecules directly it's a bit difficult. But what you can do is you can generate you can basically input what is called as a probe frequency, which will be frequency, and then you put the laser radiation, in which case I think tuning to the exact resonance is quite possible.
Okay. Prahlad, I guess you can ask her the question again if you've got any doubts. So I guess she will be willing to answer it in the comment section. So moving on to the two last questions we've got. One of it is India does not spend enough on research. How true is this? How challenging is it for researchers to obtain grants and keep a project going? Again, this is something you
Yes,
can
something.
choose to. Yeah, it's a tricky question, but yeah, it's up to you to answer. You can also opt to not answer
Okay.
if you.
So this is something. Yes, it's okay. I think I would like to answer. I've been searching
Okay.
for a platform to answer. Okay. Yeah. So this is something which has been concerning me as well. And over the years, like ever since the first science policy was established, again, I don't remember the exact year when the science policy was introduced, maybe in the 1960s or just after, Jawaharlal Nehru was coming up with these ideas of establishing research institutes in India. It was first called as the science policy alone, where they were focusing only on like the aspects of science
Mhm.
alone. And when the GDP was about 6.8 percentage for science, but
Okay.
over the years the GDP allotted to science research and development has been coming down drastically,
Okay. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is definitely something to worry about, because that like as institutes increase, like the GDP allotted to science and technology has to definitely increase.
Mhm.
And every time, like every 5 to 10 years, when the policy framework changes, it was science policy, and then it became science and technology policy, and then now we refer to it as science technology. The expectation is high, the pressure which is put on the institutes and the professors or the directors and the students is pretty high, which
Okay.
also means you have to give the necessary resources to do research, right? I mean, without input we cannot do anything about it.
Very fair. Very
So
fair. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so that is something which is something to be concerned about, and I
Fair
hope
enough.
like somebody would take like the next policy framework is going to take place very soon, like I think in 2021, I think Vijay Raghavan is working on it. Vijay Raghavan and his team is working on that. I hope it will get better, but I'm not quite sure about it.
So at
Let's
least
hope for the best.
yeah. So at least towards fundamental science. I mean, I know that fundamental sciences are not something as glamorous as what an ISRO does, but these are actually a lot more important in the long run in terms of
Yeah.
let's say self-sufficiency as our country. So yeah, I guess what you say makes a lot of sense. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the last question for the day is: can you throw some light on how you've been working towards science communication, and where do you think we as a country lack in this aspect?
Okay. Science communication as a field itself is like pretty new in India. Like we don't have a lot of science communicators
Okay.
in the country. But as someone in science, as someone like even as a student of science, I think as much as you do research, as much as you know like earn in research, as much as you know like contribute to research, it's also important that you have to communicate what you are doing,
Okay.
right? Because it's eventually you're being paid with the citizens' taxes, so
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
almost becomes a right to tell them what you're doing, what is happening in your country. That is also going to increase the awareness about how better the country is. Like every time, like even when I was about to do, I said that okay, fine, I'll go for a bachelor's in physics. Everyone is like, what does physics give you? Nothing, right? Instead, go for an engineering degree. Right. So because we don't really get a lot of
Yeah. It's
science
not as
news or anything,
glamorous
we
as
don't
what
have.
everybody thinks. Yeah, but the truth is, it's a lot more important in the long run. And yeah, I mean,
Definitely.
we keep telling that launching a rocket inspires generations of students to look up to the sky and take part in science. But that's true for any simple lab. I guess you go and leave a kid in a lab, they're more than I mean, they're definitely going to get curious, and they're going to invest some time to understand what's going on there, and they're eventually going to move
Yeah,
towards that. So yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So I guess
So
yeah. I'm sorry for interrupting. Please, yeah, please
no,
continue.
no, no, just well.
Exactly. So as glamorous as technology looks like, science is the backbone for it, and in this country, yeah.
I think only in the past few years there have been quite a number of science communicators who are coming up to like communicate science through different platforms. Like I was introduced to science communication, and I was I enjoy science communication now doing Twitter, because I think Twitter is like great to follow the right
Yeah, yeah.
people and all. Right. And like if you look abroad, there are a number of programs for them. Like there are beautiful museums, like science museums, and a couple of students in US have started a program called the Skype a Scientist, where they link classrooms across the world with different scientists, like whoever they want to
Wow.
talk to, a paleontologist or a marine biologist or a physicist or a chemist, and these people like talk to them and work with them and all that. And there is a program called Letters to a Pre-Scientist, where again
Mm-hmm,
different schools are linked with a scientist who write letters to them.
mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a pen pal program, but mostly
Wow.
focusing on like how they can be inspired by science and everything. But so I think something like that would be really beneficial. So Research Matters has been doing a good labs, like Gubby Labs in IASC is doing a pretty good work when it comes to science communication. And Current Science has a branch called Science Last Fortnight, which is published by the Indian Academy of Sciences. They
Mm-hmm.
do a fortnightly science news column,
Okay,
and
okay.
Parth Kankaria from NCBS is doing a very good job. He's been
Okay.
training people into science communication. There is Ipsa Jain for science illustration, again
Oh
from
yeah,
Bangalore. I
Ipsa
think.
Jain. Yeah, I've heard of
Yeah,
Ipsa Jain. I'm
Ipsa
on
does
her
a very
newsletter. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Ipsa does a very good job, and I think she's also conducting these workshops now, so it's
Yes,
pretty
yes,
interesting. And
yes,
a lot
yes.
of science journalists or also budding science journalists are also coming up in India. So Sandhya Ramesh and
Sandhya
uh,
Ramesh is wonderful.
Mohan
Yeah,
also, Islam is there, and all these people are really pretty good.
right, right, right. Wonderful. So that brings us to the end of the session. So thanks a lot once again for coming on board for this, because I have enjoyed. I've very much enjoyed, having this conversation with you, because I learned a lot. And more importantly, I see this as, see, honestly speaking, I love science, but the truth is, it for most of us, it still remains out of our access, simply because there's not enough people, driving us towards taking it. It's not looked at as a form of entertainment. It's only looked at as a form of career. But to be honest, what I do has nothing to do with science whatsoever. But I still enjoy my forays into it. I still enjoy reading about it. And talking to you has been one wonderful experience, because this is what I intend to, not just me, I guess all of our in the audience, for everybody who's watching the show live, I'm hoping, and I want a lot of us to go back and take up those old books, or even go to wiki and spend some more time reading on what's happening in the world of science, because that's how we will progress forward as not just a society, but as species ourselves as well, is what I believe. So thanks once again, thanks a lot for coming on board. And if you have any thoughts on this, and to you as well, of course, so if you felt you wanted something else to be changed on this, feel free to voice out your opinion, so that from the next episodes onwards, we will be able to incorporate that. And since you're from the field of science, I would love if you can recommend some other speakers for the show, because I am definitely sure that a lot of us speakers, a lot of us audience, are willing to listen to more folks from the the science community, the PhD students, or people who are doing their postdoc. Because see, this is a community that is, of course, you get your own platforms to talk to, but it's mostly your own circle. I'm pretty sure that before this, you had an audience that was comprising of your own PhD candidates, peers, but there are folks like us who are curious, who don't have the exposure to it. So we would love to listen to you. So thanks a lot once again.
Yeah, thanks a lot so much for having me on board. And
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting because I think we initially met at Sunanda's Science Talks on Sundays,
Exactly.
but it didn't go pretty well. I mean, I won't say it didn't go pretty well, but we all had different schedules and everything. I was really excited about that because, like in Sunanda's Science Talks, we were all from different backgrounds, and you spoke about defense and all that. Right, so it's interesting. I just want to make one comment that like science is interesting. So go ahead, read science. It's not necessary that you have to definitely have a career in science. You have to have a degree in science. All that you need is like a bit of curiosity, and then go ahead, do things. Sometimes science is dangerous, but that's okay. That like when you look back at it, it's going to be a lot of fun. But be safe. Take care, and thank you everyone for joining us. So I'm looking forward to other episodes. Thank you so much. Yeah. See you. Bye.
Bye bye.